Hi there, Kevin. How are you today?
I'm doing very well. How are you, Finn?
I'm fine, thanks. I wanted to discuss with you this article that you just published on Substack, and I have to congratulate you. It's one piece of work, huh?
Yes.
Mixing the ancient Greek authors which with the current geopolitical events. That's quite a feat, huh? Let's just jump into it. I'll share just for a couple of moments your article here, and let's go.
Well, the basic structure, the genesis of it was a friend of mine back from San Francisco was having some issues. Uh, and she told me about this book about she was learning about forgiveness. Fred Luskin, he's a Stanford professor. And so anytime I hear anything, I immediately transfer it to geopolitics. So I thought about it for a little bit. It's like, that could actually fit. At the same time, I had just seen the Odyssey, and I'm actually more interested in the Aristeia, the trilogy by Aeschylus. And so this really struck me when I saw videos of it. And so my brain's always thinking of it and putting frameworks in there. And so I could see in Luskin's setup, there was basically grievance and forgiveness, which is much more, I don't want to say rational, but it's much less emotional. The emotion is still there, but it's managed. And so I could see that in war and in geopolitics, you have like the the bloodlust or the very emotional kind of agitation that we see actually. It's used by elites in nations to stoke the population to keep them on board. It's natural. It happens all the time. You want to only do that a little bit. Often it can get out of control, and you can kind of see with the war in Iran. They didn't really do a good program of justifying it before, but there was this kind of like this idea that Iran's been killing Americans for 47 years, and the hostage crisis, and we got to get revenge. And so a lot of that reminded me of the Aristeia and the events of King Agamemnon. And so what I was struck by the play is the opening scene where there's a watchman looking into the distance. And that's kind of like a person who is ruminating on the past, on a past pain, and they're constantly looking at that into the past, basically, and trying to correct it. And so once that, with that, then King Agamemnon comes back. He had sacrificed his daughter before the Trojan War, and so his wife met him, pretended everything was okay, and then once he was vulnerable, she struck and killed him. And so, which initiated a blood feud, which I feel is what the U.S. and Israel are trying to kind of invoke with Iran, whereas Iran, to my surprise, has actually kind of come off as much more pragmatic. Now, certainly, for years, the great Satan and everything, they rile up their population, obviously, with the past historical grievances. But so far during this war, they've actually come off, and maybe this is just their kind of image they want to project, is somewhat rational and willing to negotiate, whereas it's the West that's more the blood feud. So with the Aristeia, there's basically a transference. There's like we start with the old gods, which are basically feminine, in the old sense of bloodlust, of the Furies, basically, uh, who want to right all wrongs with blood. Blood is eye for eye, basically, but blood for blood. And as the play progresses, you slowly. So the next in the second play, the libation bearers, the mother Clytemnestra, who killed Agamemnon, he kills his mother in revenge. And so in the third uh, play of the trilogy, they have a trial. Athena holds a trial, which is very interesting because they're trying to get away from these blood feuds and getting more towards a generalized system of justice. Which so in Greek archetypes, the ground and the earth is feminine, and the heavens and the sky is masculine. And so what they're basically trying to do is get away from this earthbound bloodlust and getting up more to kind of like a rational, more standoffish kind of system. It's obviously they're trying to apply this to Athens. Aeschylus, the playwright, this was in 458 BC. And so obviously he's taking Homer, the dramas of Homer, and he's doing it for a domestic audience. And he actually sets it in Athens, which didn't even exist during Homer's time. And so the play is really a lesson about a new order coming into being. And so obviously, and my son criticizes me for doing this too much, but I always see the transition from unipolar to multipolar so with the bloodlust and the kind of striking. And what was uncanny is so we have the Furies, who are represented by female vengeance. And the name of the operation is Operation Epic Fury, which struck me as, really an unconscious callback. I don't know. Some of those guys could be pretty smart up in the Pentagon. They know their classics, and they might, the thing is with this Iran war, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it's just maybe not. But,
I have a feeling that you're giving them a little bit too much credit here, but
it's possible. But for example, during the Iraq War, there's this book called The Arab Mind and the Israelis and the Americans were kind of using these psychological techniques to humiliate the Iraqi captives. And so they do think sometimes at a higher level. I'm not going to.
I wish they had read something about the Persian mind or the Persian history, because then they might not even have attacked on the 28th of February and even last year, right? But if I just make some comment here, I think it's very, very interesting, the parallels that you're making here between the classics. And for those of you who don't remember, who don't know these works, just go ahead and read Kevin's article, because he mentions a lot of this stuff. What I want to mention, though, is I don't get exactly the feeling when I look at the United States. I don't exactly get the feeling of this night watchman who is staring in the distance, suffering with sweat and tears, and focusing on his grievance and on the return of the king. I don't see the United States in this way at all, actually. I see them very much as an adolescent, right? We had this conversation before.
Yeah.
I see them also as very distracted, constantly distracted, right? By a lot of different things. So that's the first thing I want to say. And I think that in a way, what is interesting is when you look at these classics from the Greeks, they are in a way a little bit childish in our view. They are a little bit, let's say not too developed, because they don't master their emotions, they don't master their relationship with the outside world in a way which we could today, right? They don't understand psychology very well, right? You have basically these very primitive, or let's say very simplistic people with just very, very few emotions. The emotions are never very complex, neither with the people nor with the gods. So this strikes me also as a little bit childish. And what happened in the 5th century, both in Asia with the arrival of Buddha and with Pericles and the Golden Age and the arrival of Socrates and Plato, is that you had a kind of coming of age also in Greece and around the world, and it was in Confucius was approximately at the same time. So something happened at that time, and you can really see the difference between what happened before, namely these Greek tragedies, and what happened afterwards. I'm not saying, of course, that everything is rational and everything is perfect afterwards. I'm just saying that we have a little bit a different, a more complex view of history and the interaction of societies, right? But the United States still seems to me somehow a little bit caught in this a little bit more adolescent way of looking at the world, and this creates troubles all the time for the United States, despite the actual power, political, military, economic that it has. Um, so I think to some extent, I really see this link with the United States, but specifically for this grievance, maybe less easily, because for me, you know, as a libertarian, I never see the state or the the government as a single individual. It's always a group of individuals and groups of individuals, bureaucrats or politicians or ruling minorities, if you wish. They will never act exactly like individuals. We know this very well. So a lot of these personal feelings will be more subdued, much more subdued actually. And you will have the raison d'etat, right, that will express itself. So when the United States today is talking about vengeance from 47 years, we have been treated we have been wronged by Iran and they have waged a war against us. I mean, we all know that this is just a narrative. This is just a
Exactly.
lie. And all the people who know something at the top, they know that it's just a lie. They know that it's just propaganda. It's just, to create an excuse, a reason, a casus belli, to present to the American people that unfortunately has not studied enough, right? That is not developed enough in its comprehension of these things. So I would say that yes, on the surface, it's fully correct what you're saying. But what my idea is that it's more the surface message, and that beneath it's not at all a question of that. You know very well that
I
the
I
war didn't
agree
start
completely,
47
actually.
years ago. It started actually much earlier with the British and also American control of Iranian
Yeah,
resources
the
and
coup d'etat in
the
53.
1953
I mentioned
coup
it.
d'etat that was organized by the Americans and the Brits. So this is just basically storytelling. But back to your work, which is really interesting.
So I agree completely, actually. I think that's it wasn't the U.S. wasn't meant to be the watchman. It was Israel. They are a nation or a people defined by grievance, by historic grievance and Amalek. So it's really them, they who are the watchmen, who are obsessed by past grievances.
Right, I see.
Uh, and so the U.S. is just kind of the agent or and they're absolutely just manipulating the narratives. See, I go through and edit it, but I definitely had I was trying to express that. It might not have come out completely correctly, but to me, the U.S. is somewhere in between the two archetypes.
Yeah, I
Because
think it's
later on, I
interesting.
go, which I think is kind of funny. So I use the classics, but then I use pop music. We
But
have the
yeah, before we go to Fleetwood Mac, I just want to read this very good sentence here that I found so beautiful. Over the centuries, this night watchman has transformed into an archetype for anyone trapped in the exhausting cycle of rumination. To hold a deep grievance is to act as this watchman, frozen in a painful defensive posture, wet with the dew of one's own sweat and tears, and enduring the unbearable boredom of mentally rehearsing the same old story while fanning the hidden embers of smoldering injuries. That's
okay.
beautiful. Very well
Thank you.
written, Kevin.
But
So,
clearly, that's not the U.S. Okay, we
no, but
agree.
it's not the US, and that's why I reacted. But it's
Exactly. I
the
should have made it clear. That's
yeah,
Israel.
it was not so clear because you start talking about the US-Iran war. That's why I thought that this is what you meant. But indeed,
It's
because
Israel.
here you don't mention Israel. You mention here the geopolitical clash between the United States and Iran. But now I
You're
see
right. You're right.
you mean
I could have made
Israel, of
that
course.
clear. You're absolutely correct. Um, and so And so the two archetypes. Then in pop music, I've always been struck by Stevie Nicks and Christine McVie of Fleetwood Mac, how different their arc. If you listen to it, when Stevie Nicks has a song, it's kind of like your crazy ex who's like full of emotion. I mean, it's beautiful. The songs are beautiful and they're very impactful. And she's playing a part, obviously. It's not, I suppose, I don't know. Whereas when you hear Christine McVie, she's like the happy, nice girlfriend that you all kind of wish you had in the present. And Stevie Nicks is the one you think about in the past. And so I've always seen that. And so geopolitically, the U.S. is probably a little closer to Christine McVie. I mean, they don't really. It's more kind of realism and just power grabbing, basically. They're not really driven by a strong sense of grievance. Well, as Israel has just the grievances stacked. I'm not saying they're fake; they're real. You know, the Holocaust happened. You know,
Yeah, but the Holocaust is not a
libels.
grievance against the Iranians, right? It's a grievance maybe against even the whole world.
They constantly Amalek. They have an archetype of grievance, and so they apply it. For
Yeah,
the Iranians, it
you're
was Cyrus the Great
yeah,
that
you're
saved
absolutely right.
them from Babylon and reestablished the Second Temple.
Yeah,
So
of course. And I mean, this whole principle of victimhood is extremely important, even in the identity, the Jewish identity, or not to speak of the Zionist identity. And there is a guy called Alon Mizrahi. I don't know if you read him, but he knows because he's Israeli, right? But he talks a lot about this. So yes, it's very clear.
yes, and so as I was discussing with my son afterwards, it's actually been a very successful strategy for Israel, for the Jewish people, because they're basically the only ancient people who have survived into modernity. And so this kind of grievance-based identity has actually functioned. And so we have to look at it kind of both ways. Most other ancient peoples kind of just dissipated into the wind, whereas they, even in the diaspora, they kept together, and it was really around these grievances. And so at least one major part of it. And
Yeah.
so we have to be careful. But the problem is when they get so much power, like that they can influence the United States, a great power, who is generally pragmatic. That's where the danger comes in, where you take the military power of the United States and you fuel it with grievance, the Israeli grievance, and you have kind of a monster, basically,
Yeah.
a potential monster.
Definitely. And that
And
means
so,
also a monster that is ready to take action, even if this action is going to hurt itself and its friends. This is very important, right?
that's very important. And so then I connect, maybe it's a stretch, but you know, the 160 schoolgirls who were killed on the first day. I mean, was that an accident, or was it maybe it was an accident. Maybe they're smart and it was the start of a blood feud. So it's like Iphigenia, the sacrifice. She was sacrificed in order to start the war, and there's kind of a parallel there. I don't know, I don't know how the classic. I will tell you this: the Israeli military are very intelligent, and there's an article where they use the ideas of Gilles Deleuze to manage the Palestinians. It's a fascinating article. And so it horrifies like Deleuzian people, but you can apply these kind of ideas to war. And so basically, what I come down to is that the way that China represents kind of the Athena, the way of kind of just managing geopolitical tensions. So the ending of the Eumenides is that the Furies, the angry sisters, get put down into a basement and become the kindly ones. They're actually domesticated, which, from a feminist point of view, is somewhat ironic. And so what China seems to be doing, they've been trying to get to domesticate, say, Saudi Arabia and Iran, to get them to talk to each other and to get them to think about business. It's all business. Let's start exchanging commodities. It's capitalism. I mean, it's just to start flowing commodities, let's start building economies, let's start building infrastructure. It's a more pragmatic approach as opposed to the unipolar one, which is grasping for power. And the tragedy is that, as we're seeing live in this Iran war, it's not helping the U.S. unipolar position. It's destroying it. It's not a rational kind of move, even if you want to maintain your unipolar status. I mean, you could say, okay, maybe Russia, the Ukraine starting that war, maybe there was some idea because you had a proxy, you had a very good proxy. Ukraine's a powerful proxy, willing to die for you. You just had to supply them with weapons, but now it's gone on too long. They're out of weapons. They're running out of weapons in Iran, and they're really
Yeah,
coming up
they're in the
against
bind. They're definitely in the bind. But
a
anyway,
dangerous bind.
let's. I propose that we end here and we do a next video to basically conclude this article with your main messages also. So let's end it here right now. It was a really interesting discussion, and let's pick up and just make it like a conclusion video because there are a lot of
Sure.
stuff in your essay. So thanks, Kevin.
Thank you, Finn. Talk to you soon.
Bye.